For our devotional, and again, so thankful to be with you guys tonight, and appreciate the time that we've had together. Just want to share a thought or two, and then we'll finish up for this evening. But as I mentioned earlier, I had an opportunity a few weeks ago to be in Haiti, and over there it's pretty interesting because there's such a big language barrier, and it's hard in one sense just to get up and preach and teach, but it's really hard when every sentence you say has to be translated. So a 15-minute lesson is a 30-minute lesson, a 30-minute lesson is an hour lesson. So I really enjoyed being there, but one of the things that we taught them, and I'll just kind of talk about this evening, is how important it is to recognize that every person has been made in God's image. So you go back to Genesis 1, and that's how the Bible starts off when it's talking about humanity, that God made man, male and female, in His image. And so I bring that up because in our main kind of lesson together, we talked about how at times we feel empty and lonely. One of the other feelings I think that people often experience is the feeling of inadequacy, that we feel like we're not quite enough, that we don't measure up. And if you're like me, in some way, form, or fashion, you probably fall into the comparison trap a little bit, where you start to look at other people in your life and you think about what they have and how you should have that, and what they do and how you'd like to do that. And you look at their pictures on social media, and social media, I don't think it's the problem. I think the problem is our heart, but social media is a big symptom of the problem. And it kind of aggravates what's already a major issue. You think about the first two people, Adam and Eve. What were they concerned about? They were concerned about their status compared to God. And you think about their sons, Cain and Abel. What was their issue? Cain got upset because God was more pleased with Abel's offering, and it was a status issue. First two brothers, their comparison led to competition, led to murder, right? You think about the followers of Jesus, the disciples of Jesus, what was the question they were asking all the time? Who's the best? Who's the greatest? You think about the Pharisees. They were worried about doing everything right so they'd be so set apart because they were worried about their status. It was like, how do I rank compared to other people? Well, here's two reasons why that's a big problem, and here's just a little phrase I want you to remember, that it's never fair to compare. Never, ever, ever, ever fair to compare, and here's why. Most of the time, when we are comparing ourselves to someone else, we're being really unfair, and this is the reason. We're often comparing someone else's best to our worst, okay? So if you're looking at someone on social media, and you're on your phone, Facebook, looking at Instagram, I don't know how many people have that. You just get on your computer and kind of check it out. I think this has always been a problem, but like I said, our phones make it worse. And when I was in Haiti, I didn't have service. I didn't have internet. I couldn't send text messages or look at Instagram and Facebook, anything. So I set my phone on. Well, I can't use this thing. And man, I sure slept a lot better. It was a lot. Got up early. I couldn't believe what was happening. But anyway, so I think it's sometimes good for us to distance ourselves from that, because this is what ends up happening is, have you ever watched kind of like a quick clip of a ball game, right? Instead of watching the whole thing, you just watch like the highlights, Well, that's what I do with tennis now. I used to watch the whole match. Well, now I just get on Facebook and watch a 5-minute clip, and it shows all the best shots. It shows the end of the game and everybody cheering, and it was really quick. It was neat. But I don't get to see my favorite player like smash his racket when he got really angry, or missing this really important shot, or him almost giving up. I don't get to see any of that. I just see the highlights. Well, when we're looking at other people in their lives and watching like these good moments, when they're on vacation, when they're doing something we wish we were doing, we're looking basically at their highlight reel, the best moments. But we know that nobody's life is like that 24/7, right? When I see people get on there and just they strike these interesting poses, and they smile and they look so happy, and they add filters. I mean, they're sort of like editing their image, right? They just look so happy. They look like too happy. And then I see them in person, I'm like, not so happy. And so it's strange. Social media is this weird thing. And so you've got the highlight reel, and then you look at your life, and over here it's kind of like at the end of a movie sometimes where an actor or someone like messed up, and it's the outtakes, they're sort of embarrassing and funny. Well, it's like we're comparing someone else's highlight reel to our outtakes, right? Their best to our worst, and we're doing ourselves a disfavor because what we're doing is we're devaluing who we are based on someone else. Because what I'm trying to do is for some reason, I'm trying to measure myself by what you're good at and what you're like and what you have. And I'm forgetting that I have value because I was made in the image of God. And so what you're good at and what you do doesn't take anything away from me. You may be better off than I am, but I'm still valuable. I might be better off than you are, but you still have value because you were made in the image of God. And we were trying to tell the people there in Haiti that, and I'm thinking, this is a message that we need to hear. This is something that we need to be reminded of. So let me read this passage, and we'll be done tonight. But I think this is pretty important because it's at times we feel like we are just not worth enough, but this is what God says. This is Ephesians chapter 2, and it's talking about how pretty much everybody has a sin issue. Everybody's rebelled against God. And this is what Paul says to the church there in Ephesus. He says that we had all turned against God, verse 4, but God, being rich in mercy, because of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, we had turned completely against God. Even when we were dead in our trespasses, he made us alive together with Christ. And it says, by grace you have been saved. And he raised us up with him and seated us with him in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. And so I don't know if you kind of understand what that's saying, but it's saying our status has been raised to the same level of God's Son. Our status has been raised to just like Jesus, right? It says, so that in the coming ages he might show the immeasurable riches of his grace in kindness toward us in Christ Jesus. And here's the part that we all know. For by grace you have been saved through faith. Let me read it again. For by grace you have been saved. By grace you have been saved. And this is not your own doing, it is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. So stay with me. I know we've got some other participants. Stay with me. What this means is that no one has any bragging rights. There's no comparison. There's no competition anymore because of what Jesus has done. So when you think about it, God created us in his image, and then this says we've been recreated in the image of God because of Jesus. So let me read this last part. Verse 10. For we are God's workmanship. And another word for that is masterpiece, right? We are God's workmanship, his handiwork, his masterpiece. Created in Christ Jesus for what? For good works. So before it said that our good works didn't lead to our salvation. It's saying our salvation leads to good works, right? Which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. So here's the line that I want you to kind of remember tonight. And that is this. When we read this passage, verse 10, it says, for we are God's masterpiece, for we are God's workmanship. For some reason, we read that in very individual terms, right? Like, I'm God's masterpiece. Well, that's not really what Paul says. He says we are. But here's what I want you to remember. You are a piece of the masterpiece. Think about that. You're a piece of the masterpiece. The masterpiece is the church. The artwork of God is the church as a whole. And we are part of that masterpiece. We're a piece of the masterpiece. We're all made in the image of God, and we're saved because of Jesus, but we're a part of it. And so what that means is there's no reason why any of us should compete with each other. We shouldn't be comparing our lives. We should be sharing our lives, right? We are part of this grand artwork, this masterpiece that God has created. And because of that, each of us, each person in this room should realize we all have value and worth because we were made in God's image and we were saved for God's purposes. So we're going to sing a song, and if someone has any need, if someone is discouraged, if you feel like you don't have value, realize that you don't find, or you shouldn't find your value from somebody else. You should recognize that God gives you value. And think about this. If you're ever wondering, am I worth something? Well, God sent His Son to show you that you very much are. You are worth something to Him. So tonight, if you have a need, come as we sing this song together.